I was a few years ago, I mean, even just 4 years ago, but like especially 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I had no idea who the fuck I was. And then 10 years ago, I was figuring myself out. 5 years ago, I had a pretty good grasp of who I was and am, but was learning how to advocate for myself. And
Mm.
now both of them are like I've married the two and been like, okay, I know who I am and I know what I deserve. And I know and like I know not only like what I deserve in terms of like like external things that come like to me, it's more of like what I deserve, how to be treated.
Mm.
Um and that in and of itself has helped me say no to more things and be okay with saying no to more things, that I don't have to say yes to things, which helps my capacity to say yes to the things that do feel affirming and do feel safe.
Welcome back to Unpacking the Closet. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Caitlin, and this is the season of connection, all about queerness, culture, and the joy we build through community.
Maze Felix is an actor, dancer, drag king, model, and ASL interpreter based in Los Angeles. And they are someone who has quite literally used art to find themselves. And in doing so, made space for a whole lot of other people to do the same. Welcome, Maze.
Hey,
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
we're
We're so
excited.
happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We appreciate everyone who's come on this season and spent some time with us. So thank you. Maze, you carry a lot of identities, which we were kind of talking about before the intro here. Actor, drag king, model, dancer, ASL interpreter, and then many different labels in terms of what you feel comfortable with in terms of like trans mask. And I know you're an adoptee, AAPI, queer, all of these different labels. I kind of feel like maybe acting and dancing and all of these kind of more artistic endeavors and outlets maybe helped you find an unexpected doorway to yourself. And can you kind of tell us about when you realized that creative work was really doing something for you that maybe nothing else was?
Yeah, I love that question. Just even hearing you name all of those labels or identities or titles of art that I identify with really illuminated my ADHD of like how both autistic and ADHD I am. I was like, wow, this is why there's so many of many things. But yeah, I think it's really, really hard to pinpoint a very specific moment of when art kind of helped me find who I am or who I am helped me find the world of art. I think both of them really worked in tandem.
Mm.
When I think when I really think back in hindsight, I know I was a true artist at heart. I mean, as a kid, I was always thinking of like I was always making up different worlds, making up stories. When I look back at my time, especially recently, I've kind of recounted storytelling and what storytelling means to me. And memories of my childhood of sitting in a car, in the backseat of my car with my parents driving. I would have headphones on, listening to music and make that music into the score of a movie or of a scene. And I don't necessarily remember the specific scenes, but I remember making up scenes in my head based off of the music I was listening to. And that was both a coping mechanism for the childhood and the upbringing that I had, but it was also I leaned into that out of
Mm.
anything else that I did. I also, was very just rambunctious in terms of like I was making up characters. So like improv was a big thing for me.
Mm.
I sang a lot. I loved to perform. Most of my childhood ended up change the trajectory of it changed into any sort of performance really was like with musical instruments or with
Mm.
sports, but there was always a level of performance for me that felt authentic. And as an adoptee and also as a trans person, I had not really unpacked a lot of my identity until college. And so I was a closeted trans person, closeted queer person, and someone who hadn't really, I hadn't reckoned with who I was as an Asian adoptee. And so I would like to say that like I was kind of a natural actor because
Mm.
I masked a lot. I'm also neurodivergent, so in a neurotypical family. So I masked in so many ways. And as someone who masks, I basically was acting my entire life.
Mhm.
But in terms of like the artistic world, it was something where I kind of, pursued a life that I thought my parents wanted me to have, or that my parents did want me to have. And in college, I earned the degree that they wanted me to have. And then afterwards, I went back to pursue ASL interpreting. And even though, like, I'd still interpret, and I also am in entertainment, but I do those very separately, I do really kind of pay homage to the interpreting and deaf community because it was kind of the bridge between a very math and science world that I had been brought up in into a world of language and art and social
Mm.
justice and the values that I really wanted to like lean into. And with language, especially visual language, I am quite literally um like I'm telling a story
Mhm.
with my body. And that was a bridge into somatic movement and acting.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things I learned with acting, I actually learned under a different context through interpreting.
Mm.
So yeah, I very much often credit my ASL and interpreting journey because that helped me lean more into my artistic world. And that wasn't until the pandemic.
Mm.
The pandemic was hard on a lot of us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was a very pivotal moment for me. I probably was at like the lowest part of my life where I really needed to have top surgery. I was also in quarantine. We were all in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
I was very unhappy with myself and who I was. I was not in a healthy or safe relationship at the time. And so I decided in the middle of, or at the very end of my interpreting program, which had ended up being online at the end, I took an acting class as just an extracurricular for myself. And I was back in Ohio. I hadn't moved to Los Angeles where I'm based now. And that kind of started the domino effect of I took the class, and then I connected with friends, acting friends, actor friends who encouraged me to act more, connected with more people. And then within like, I think it was a month and a half, like I had gotten signed by my first manager and agent while I was in Ohio. And they had encouraged me to move to LA and take a risk of pursuing acting as a career, which I knew at the time was a huge risk. I knew that what I would be risking everything. But I also just needed to get out of Ohio. So for me that risk was really worth it because if there was anything like I would find community out
Mm.
even outside of my work worth. I just kind of my Mars in Scorpio just was like, I know what I want and I'm gonna go
Oh
for
my
it.
gosh,
And so
tell
I
me, what are your big three?
Okay, big three. So Mars and Scorpio, I would like to say that's my big four.
Okay.
Mm.
And I'm a Libra, Sun, Aquarius, Moon, Libra rising.
Mm.
Okay. Lots of
Okay.
Libra in there.
Yes. A
Yeah, yeah,
lot of
yeah.
air, a lot of air. Very go with the flow.
And that
And as
leads to
soon
a
as
lot
like,
of creativity,
Yes.
though.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
What about you two? What are your sense?
I'm a Capricorn sun, Gemini moon. It's the only thing that keeps me fun. And then I'm a Cancer rising.
That's really balanced.
Have a very balanced personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a Sagittarius sun. I'm a Taurus moon and a Cancer rising.
Also balanced.
Yeah.
Whoa. In
Yeah.
terms of like elements. You
Yeah,
both are Cancer rising.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
both Cancer rising. So is my wife, which is funny. We're all Cancer risings. Yeah. But yeah, no, I do feel very balanced. I think if it was not for my Taurus, I would be even more all over the place than I already am as a Sagittarius. It would be
Yeah,
crazy.
see, I needed the Gemini because it's the only thing that makes me really fun. It's like you know what you're gonna do? You're gonna follow your heart on this one. Go. It's the only thing that keeps me in that. Otherwise, the Capricorn's like, no, we're gonna
Yeah.
stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the
I feel like
stereotypical, like, my Taurus is like, I really do constantly revolve all my time around when I'm going to eat and what I'm going to eat. Like, if there's plans, I need to know what the food plan is attached to that plan. Like,
Hey,
it's imperative.
food's important.
having several tourist friends, just tourist sun friends, I feel like I don't want to speak for them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they felt validated in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Structure.
If you're not telling me what
Yeah.
the food plan is, I'm going to be irritated. Like, even if there's no
Yes.
food plan, tell me to eat beforehand. Like, just tell me.
Yeah.
I started carrying protein bars with me at all times.
Mm,
Like I have them in my car
Yes.
just
yeah,
in case, because you
yeah,
never know when you're
yeah.
Yes.
It's true.
I'm a snack guy too, a snack dad at
yeah,
heart.
Yeah,
a snack
If
dad.
we're
Get that out of the
a
hat.
snack dad.
yeah.
Yes, I like snack. Yes, I need that as a hat. If I go hiking with anyone and I love hiking, I have now been like actual legitimate life-saving things in our pack, but I would always like be the one making sure that we would have snacks. Do we have
Mm.
headlamps? I don't care. If we have snacks, we're gonna be great.
We're gonna
Yeah.
be fine as long as
Snacks
there's
and water.
food.
Yeah,
That's the truth.
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah, and water, of course, of course. I think like I really identify with Libra a lot in terms of both the social aspect, but also the equity aspect. Like it's
Mm.
very much like equity and justice,
Mm,
which makes so much sense of why my art stands for what it is and like
mm,
why I am doing art. And like there and then go with the flow. I think that's like very much where I am socially. But then the reason why I bring in my Mars and Scorpio, it's because none of my top three or my big three are any other elements. My Mars and Scorpio is the one that actually keeps me on track. And it's the
mm.
one where like it surprises a lot of people because I'm so go with the flow, but I can lock in hard. And so yeah, I'm very proud of that Mars and Scorpio.
We love a good Scorpio anything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You've talked a lot about art as a way to reclaim your story. What
Mhm.
does that actually feel like for you versus times where you've had to perform or exist in spaces that weren't really built for you? I know it's a bit
What
of a
does
heavy
that
one.
actually feel like me? Feel like for me? It is so fucking terrifying and
Mm,
vulnerable. The first time I ever shared my art was actually a poem that I wrote. It was a poem about my dad, and it recounted a true conversation that he and I had right before I left for Los Angeles. And it was me quite literally reclaiming the conversation where I became him talking back at me
mm,
Wow.
in the poem. And the first time I shared it was uh in Los Angeles. I had just moved, so it was a couple months after I'd moved, and I shared it in a public space at a public event on my mom's birthday. So there were so many things where I had come from a world where speaking my truth and being my authentic self was not okay. And
mm,
this was the first time where geographically I felt safer to do that, but I hadn't ever experienced that and what the ramifications or what the potential ramifications could have been. So that was like really, really terrifying.
Of course.
yeah.
Yeah. I had like, of course, outpouring support from external people, but it was also for a while like pretty lonesome in terms of like what my world was like back then, and it had
Mm,
only been my family and people who happened to not support me but just were in my world. And now I'm in a place, I mean that's like 6 years later. Well, it's actually
Congratulations.
I know.
thank you. It's actually 4 years since I moved, so technically 4 years, but a lot's changed. Sharing art is just as terrifying and vulnerable, but not in a way where I'm doing it and I'm waiting for like the other shoe to drop.
Mm,
I'm doing it because because just sharing who you are is always going to be really vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But when like it's yeah, I think it like seeing other people be just as authentic as I also am and hope to be in the world really motivates and encourages me to also be even more authentically myself. And so in the past few years, I've purposely surrounded myself with people who also are wanting that part of their life to be more authentic. And so yeah, it is vulnerable and it is scary. It's like it's honestly life-saving.
Mm.
I'm so happy with who I am, and I fought so hard to have the life that I have now that anytime that I get to share who I am, I just find it like it to be such a huge privilege,
Mm.
that I'm in that space, that I'm around other people who are doing the same scary thing as me. And whether we come from similar upbringings, backgrounds, or not, like we got to the same place for a
Mm-hmm.
reason. We got to like that same specific space of sharing for a reason.
Yeah. I can only imagine that as someone who is an adoptee and you are like transracial and you grew up in Ohio, I can only imagine you were surrounded by a lot of whiteness. And how has it felt to also just reconnect with like parts of your identity that maybe you didn't really get to connect with when you were growing up in that type of environment?
Thank you for that question. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I've ever gotten asked that question. Yeah, growing up, I had so much internalized racism.
Mm.
It took me I'm 30 now, and it took me like 25 years to actually say the words out loud that I'm proud to be Asian.
Mm.
When I was younger, I would often the first thing I would tell myself for a first part of my life was, "You're such an ugly white child," or "You're such an ugly white girl," which in many
Mm.
ways, as a trans person, there was a lot of things to unpack. And then as I was trying to embrace my Asianness, I got to another part of my adolescence where I would say this to myself in the mirror. I would say to myself, "You're such an ugly Asian girl."
Mm.
Mm.
And it was something where like I wasn't fully I knew very much so that I was Asian, that I am Asian. I knew that I was adopted. I had that awareness. But I think the conversations around race, especially not only because it was Ohio and it's predominantly white and it's also like Midwest, but and very conservative, but also in the family that I grew up in, race was not always, it was mostly like not an open topic for us. And it was
Mm.
definitely not like necessarily a topic that was safe for me to share how I felt about my own race. Anything about my race, it was taught to me. And so
Mm.
I was taught what I should think about my own race or what I should
Mm.
think about people of color by my white parents. And I really internalized that for a long time to a point where I had like self-hatred. And that like really disconnected me from myself, but also like my own people.
Yeah.
Finally, I also do a lot of advocacy in the adoptee community too. That's another thing that I do. And so, now I work within like adoptee and transracial, specifically transracial adoptees, but adoptee, kinship, foster care, and that there's another form of like reclamation of that where most of our life, whether it was like what we were told to think of ourselves or what we were just told our story was, especially like my origin story, most things that I know about where I came from or what my life was like before I came to the States were from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in like an artistic perspective, a storytelling perspective, another kind of like key motivating factor for me to become an artist, to become an actor, was the fact that I wanted to tell my own story through
Mm.
art. I kind of was fed up with having other people tell my own story. And then as an interpreter, such a job that I feel so grateful to be in and grateful that I get to be a part of that field. But as an interpreter, the essence of an interpreter is that you are basically telling other people's story. You're communicating
Yes.
for other people. So I went from other people telling my story to I was telling other people's story, or interpreting other people's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted a chance to finally tell my own story.
Mm.
And the first thing was through poetry, and that was like my truth. And then I was like, I want to lean into other parts of like other art forms. So that went into acting, that went in right now it's both specifically acting, drag, and dance. Those are like my top three right now. And I would also like to like say that modeling is always going to there's always going to be a mix of that, but especially with the storytelling of reclaiming my identity, it's those three of those.
Mm.
That makes, I mean, it's interesting because we actually just did another podcast episode a day ago where it seems like poetry seems to be this like
Yeah.
reprieve that queer people have, because this is like the second or third time someone has said that they started their creative journey with poetry.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really interesting about that. I don't have a full thought here, but I think that's really interesting because I think that might be a lot of people's first creative outlet,
Mm.
especially as queer people, just as an expression. Maybe because we're taught it in school too. I don't know, or we study it. But
Yeah.
you mentioned a
Yeah.
lot about being authentic to yourself as being like this really high priority. Yet you're kind of working in an industry that still struggles with authentic casting.
Mm-hmm.
So, what
Yeah.
has it meant to have a queer affirming rep team in your corner? And where do you still
Mhm.
feel the gaps?
Yeah, having an affirming rep team makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, not only is it that, well, I'll start with that. So it makes such a big difference when they might not fully understand who you are, especially if they don't share the same identities.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that that's actually okay. They don't need to share all the same identities. It's great that if they do, it might, and sometimes it like the conversations, regardless if they do or don't, it might take a little bit more time to have those conversations. But as long as someone who is like willing to try to understand,
Mm-hmm.
especially in terms of like workspaces that you're going to be a part of or any roles that you might be submitting, that takes so much emotional labor off of you. And so having a team who listens, who trusts that you trust yourself, and who advocates for what you want rather than what they think that you should be.
Mm.
It's very much of like me. I think, I'm actually just realizing this in this moment, but I think it's actually me having a positive dynamic with my rep team is actually me reclaiming my own experiences talking to my own parents.
Mm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I can have this conversation with my rep team, who there is there is some sort of a working power dynamic
Yeah.
back and forth at any time that we're working together. It's kind of the same thing that goes with parenting, where especially with identity of like me bringing to the table of who I am and them not necessarily knowing or understanding the full nuance of those identities or who I am. But if there's like a willingness and openness of it really makes all the difference of the sustainability of our relationship.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And that's hard to
Yeah.
find because I have also been in and out of the acting industry here in LA. And that's a very special thing to find a rep team that really carries you like that, because a lot of times you find people who really just want you to fit a mold that they're looking to check off on their boxes. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but reps, managers, they look at their teams a lot of times as like, oh, well, I've already got a blonde girl, I've already got a brunette, I've already got one black person, I've already got one, and they check them off as if you're just this check mark for them to complete. So finding a rep team that really holds space for you and lets you like communicate with them, like that's very special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it's very unfortunate that like that theme is
Hmm.
it's across all boards of like any industry, any field of
Mm-hmm.
just of checking off, yeah, marks and identities. But yeah, I think the other component that really is helpful is like now I know who I am a lot
Mm.
more. Like I was a few years ago, I mean, even just 4 years ago, but like especially 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I had no idea who the fuck I was. And then 10 years ago, I was figuring myself out. 5 years ago, I had a pretty good grasp of who I was and am, but was learning how to advocate for myself. And
Mm,
now both of them are like I've married the two and been like, okay, I know who I am and I know what I deserve. And I know and like I know not only like what I deserve in terms of like like external things that come like to me, it's more of like what I deserve, how to be treated.
mhm.
Um and that in it of itself has helped me say no to more things and be okay with saying no to more things, that I don't have to say yes to things, which helps my capacity to say yes to the things that do feel affirming and do feel safe.
I feel like
Mm,
that's so hard for people to do, especially queer folks, because you want to. A lot of us are fighting that pressure to be palatable
mm,
for other people in order to be accepted. And I think it's such a beautiful thing when someone is able to come to the realization of like, no, I don't have to be palatable for you. I just have to be me. And then I know what I deserve and I deserve respect from you.
mm.
Yeah.
And being able to say no to things is another form of respecting yourself and your
Yes.
capacity and your time. And I think that's just it's a hard lesson to learn, but it's a beautiful one when we get it and we're able to work on
Yeah.
that. And I think it's a lifelong lesson, it's something we keep working
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it like, even as I say it, like I definitely am like not always perfect. It's always like a daily practice
Hmm.
that, there's moments of slip up, moments of like learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like that for everyone. No one's ever going to be perfect. I hate the phrase like practice makes perfect. I've really come
Mm.
throughout my life to really like despise that phrase so much. I really like recently someone told me a different version of it. It was like practice makes progress instead of practice makes
Mm.
perfect. And I've started telling that to myself recently because I'm like, you know what, that's true. Like who is ever in any aspect of your life going to be perfect? No one, but you're always going to progress as a person. You're going to progress in the field that you're in. You're going to progress as a person internally, externally. So I really like that phrase. So yeah, you're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be things to work on. You have stuff every day that you have to sometimes relearn or remind yourself of or whatever, but you're progressing as a person each time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
really, really like that phrase. Whoever
Yeah.
said that is a genius.
Yeah, shout out to my trainers for my most recent job that I just started.
That's one of my
Love that.
favorite phrases to use with people too.
Mm,
But like
yeah.
you can be a work of art. Wait, is it? You can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. That one's
Yeah.
another one that's really good.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We just
I
mentioned
love
that one in the
that.
podcast too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's Sophia
Oh.
Bush
Yes.
who
Yeah.
said it. Yeah.
Love Sophia Bush. Wow.
Right?
That's a throwback. Wow. Throwback to One Tree Hill.
I know. R.I.P.
Oh
The other
no.
guy
Oh
for
no.
One Tree Hill.
You
Oh,
know,
life.
this is not a question that we necessarily had written down, but I'm curious now in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about your journey into either learning that you are, or I don't know if you've been officially diagnosed or anything, but you mentioned ADHD
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. How has that journey been for you? And when did it start? Like, how does it affect? Because I personally feel like I'm somewhere in there, ADHD,
Yeah.
ADHD, I don't know, but I haven't gotten diagnosed yet. So I'm curious as to how that journey has been for you.
The exact moment I can tell you the story and it's kind of hilarious.
I'd love to know.
Let's
But
hear
in
it.
terms of like the general journey, it's like when did it start? It probably was there all along my entire life. Probably the day I like exited the womb. But the actual moment of it first was ADHD and then it was autism. But I had also just moved again. Like, I shrunk a lot in Ohio.
Mm,
By the time I got to LA, I was slowly crawling out of a lot of different shells that I put myself in or that I was put in. And this one person that I had met earlier on when I had first moved had asked me out on a date, and we were sitting at a cafe, and we were just kind of like, we were talking about life and who we are and getting to know each other. And I mentioned, I can't remember who mentioned neurodivergence, but I made a comment of like, wonder if I'm neurodivergent. And the entire time, like before our conversation, visibly was like, we were in a really pretty loud cafe. And so there were so many reasons why I was distracted.
Mm.
And so I often kind of fell in and out of the conversation. And then as soon as that kind of like came up, I was like, oh yeah, it was very nonchalant too, because again, I never really had an intentional conversation. I was like, oh yeah, that resonates. I wonder if I'm neurodivergent. Ha 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 ha. And she looked at me and she was like, do you think you're neurodivergent? Um, and she started like asking me all these questions, like literally listing all of these different things. And I felt like she had had a file on me before like our first date. And I was like, yes, I do this. Yes, I do this. Yes, I do this. Yes, I do this. And she was the kindest human ever. She was like, at the very end, she was like, I'm not going to tell you that you have ADHD because that's not my job. But I also would be okay. Like, I would also like really encourage you to like maybe look into that. It was like the nicest way to be like, honey, you have
That's so sweet.
ADHD. And I was and so my response was like, wow, you know so much about like you know so many of the qualifications of ADHD. Like, why is that? And she was like, Maze, I have ADHD. And
A different
so then
kind
she
of
was
coming
like,
out story.
a different kind of coming out story. I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, usually what happens is, and she was like, oftentimes people with ADHD, aka with any identity that's similar to like one another, you hang out with the people you've always hung out with the people that have ADHD. I started like going back in my files of like like my friends in Ohio, or just the people I clicked really really well immediately with in LA. And in LA it's like there's so much more community and especially like openness and conversation about neurodivergence. So in Ohio it was very very taboo at the time. So yeah, I like was kind of going through the files and just like, okay, yeah, that person has ADHD, that person has ADHD. And so the statistics were doing their thing.
The
And so then
math
I
was
went to my
mathing.
The math
the
was
math
math.
was mathing. The math was mathing. And so I that next week I went into my therapy sessions. Shout out to therapy, go to therapy. Yeah, I started my therapy session with like, hey, so this happened and I think I would love to kind of explore this topic. And my therapist was like, I don't really need. She's like, I'm not the person that can like officially diagnose you, but we can get you to that referral. And like you might like even without an official diagnosis, like I'm already going to tell you, you already have ADHD. And then a very similar thing happened with autism, and then the same thing happened with the same therapist of like, yeah, you're autistic too. And then I did do the tests, and it very much was like, you're audio.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I very similarly like I kind of started realizing it through TikTok as we do, right? Because now your TikTok algorithm knows you better than you know you. And so I was like, this is so
True.
strange. All these videos keep popping up about ADHD and ADHD, and I resonate with all of them. How funny. And my wife was like, yeah, babe, pretty sure you have something. Like, pretty sure we're both on that spectrum somewhere. And I was like, interesting. So I call my mom, Mom, I think I might have ADHD. And she was like, uh huh. And I was like, what do you mean, uh huh? Like, she's like, well, yeah. I mean, like, you've been ADHD since you were a child. And I was like, you've never told me this. And she was like, well, it was the 90s. No one got diagnosed.
Literally no one in the 90s.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah. So she's
all
like,
the
Yeah.
millennials are finding out now.
she was like, you
Yes.
managed and you did well. Like, you didn't, there was never really a problem where like I never saw like a need for you to go to the doctor and like get a diagnosis because you always managed to like make things work. So, and I was like, okay.
Wow.
Look at that resilience.
Yeah, what so resilient.
I love my mom, but also I think my mom is also undiagnosed autistic, and
I
she
mean,
thinks so too.
a
So,
lot of people are. And I think there
Yeah.
is, I mean, you definitely want to go and see a therapist or get tested or whatever rather than just TikTok. But
yes.
I think there's a lot of neurospiciness that exists, whether there's a diagnosis or not, in a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially creative folks, too. You see a lot
Yeah.
of that ability to see things in a different light and different way with folks that are a little neurospicy.
Oh my gosh, speaking
Yeah.
of my mom, it's like she heard me. I'll
Her
have to call her.
ears were
That's the
I'll
burning.
have to call her back. That's so funny.
That is the fourth time something like this has happened to me just today,
Oh
where
my
I've
god.
said someone's name and or like someone else had said someone's name or referred to them, and then that person called them.
How
This
weird.
is the fourth time today.
Magic.
Yeah. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
Cosmic. I don't know. It's the
Psych.
fire horse.
It's
We
It's
go with
the
I
the fire
year of the
horse.
fire horse.
I
Yeah.
have my little fire horse here.
That's
Got
so
my
That's
little
the
cute.
cute fire horse.
yes.
The fire horse is like, I'm so cute, but don't mess with me.
But don't mess with me. Yeah, don't.
It's the
Yeah.
year for that. It's the year for
Honestly,
that.
that's what we need. That's what we need.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
That's funny. Okay. Sorry,
I love how
I got us
even our
off track.
conversation is a depiction of ADHD.
I know. It's true though.
You know.
Like, not to be ADHD, but here's a different topic.
Yeah, I didn't have this written down at all, but now that we're mentioning it, yeah.
You know, I have a question. So,
Yeah.
what does your creative process actually look like day to day?
Mm.
Like, where do you
Oh
find
my God.
inspiration and, what's firing all your cylinders?
Everywhere, anywhere, all at once. Also, shout out to that movie. Love that. That's also like a huge inspiration itself, that film. But no, truly, like everywhere, because my day to day looks, I don't have a day to day specific artistic routine because it looks so different for me.
Hmm.
Even this last month, in 1 week, I had done a drag show, I had done a circus show, a cabaret, I had filmed a film, I did a dance film as well, which was separate from another short film that I did, all in 1 week. So I had stretched all my creative like juices and like my different creative hats in 7 days, a little bit more than 7 days, but like it was around there. That was a very that was a really cool challenge.
Mm.
I had never really gotten to do that, and I hope I get to do that. Like it's always really cool to either like hyper fixate on one project for a really long time, or to do all these like mini gigs or mini projects, and it changes every single day. So routine wise, it looks different, but my inspiration is anything and everywhere. Like I look to my friends, I honestly like I think the people in my life, especially like the people that I get to work with, my core people, are my inspiration. We're just as equally like inspiring one another and putting each other into our art. Kind of like going back to, you know, they're motivating me to be just as authentic as I am to them. It's also helping with our own art. And so yeah, I think yeah, this the stories that I tell, whether it's like other people's stories or the stories that I write, because I also write scripts. I have not, that is one piece of art I have not shared widely yet, but
Mm.
Okay.
I am in the process of writing a script
That's so
of,
exciting,
That is
Maeve.
exciting.
thank you. Yeah. I sent it to a person for the first time to have it read. I am that's like a whole new vulnerable thing because it's yeah, it's a different kind of art form. But I think just like hearing other people's feedback and taking another part of like my art, any sort of process of art is just like taking my time,
Mm.
and that could look like what it's perceived as a long time or what I just feel like I need time. It could be like a day, it could be 5 days. It's not really, there's no like quantity necessarily involved, but I know like what it feels like in my body. I listen to my body so much now. There's so much of a somatic relationship that I have to like what I'm feeling versus what I'm thinking. And
Mm,
so if I'm feeling right about something, and then that's when I make the decision versus being up here.
mm.
So it's taking the time and like sitting with myself and sitting in my body before I make any decision in art.
That's so important and on so many levels
Yeah.
too. I think people have a very unique relationship with how they feel in their bodies. And I think a lot of us are very heady. So
Mm.
it's quite a challenge to try and get down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also was a huge, again, shout out to therapy, a huge, like, I owe that a lot to therapy as well, because that actually led me to dance. And then dance led me to this practice of
That's
like this
beautiful.
new form of like art for me. Yeah.
It's
Great.
interesting, actually, when you said that, the first thing that came to mind is just in the last couple of weeks, I've been holding so much tension in my neck and my shoulders. And I had all these like crazy headaches for like a couple weeks. Jerry Lynn knows. And my wife was like, you need a massage. We need to get some of this tension out. And I've always known about myself that I hold anxieties and I hold frustrations physically. I've always very much held it physically in my body. But when you said that, it just made me realize, like, as an artistic person, I don't have a lot of artistic outlets right now. I haven't been doing a lot that's artistic besides this podcast. And I just now thought about what you were saying, and I was like, that's really interesting. I wonder if one of my problems right now is the fact that I don't have a like artistic outlet, something physical that will get some of that out, right? I'm not listening to my body. I'm not giving my body that outlet that it's used to having. And so I'm holding everything in right now. So I'm like, oh, So just as we have this conversation, I'm having realizations too, like, okay,
Oh my
interesting. I
God.
haven't been listening to that side. And maybe that's what's causing all of this tension. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
My like heart is so warm like hearing that and like hearing you like connect those dots.
Yeah, yeah, but it's true, like you said, therapy is so important, and really listening to your body and being in tune with what you actually need and not always what your head is telling you, right? Because sometimes our minds like to trick us, and that's not, sometimes you need a balance between your heart and your mind.
That's
Yeah,
true.
absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm like,
Yeah.
I need a dance class now or something.
That would be fun.
Yes.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Dance is like my one of my biggest loves, and I like right at the moment, but actually say that dancing has helped me become a better actor.
Hmm.
Um,
I
and
could see that.
I've loved and valued my work as an actor so much more because of dance. And as a trans person who like post-op for like the last almost 6 years, I feel so in my body. As
Mm.
soon as I start dancing, it's like a whole other part of like being in your body that like
Hmm.
I was in my body post-op, especially being like euphoric in this new body, but then having a relationship of moving in my body, I didn't necessarily click. It didn't necessarily click until I started to actually physically move. And that helped that helped with the storytelling, that helped with me being more authentic in who I am into my art, into the rest of like the other jobs.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. I think I've always felt like it's really important for anybody who's in theater or acting of any kind to take as many different classes or activities as possible and to do all of those things. Do dance, at least a couple different types. Try it. You should do like lighting and sound and stage, but you should also do improv, like you said, and you should learn to write
Yes.
your own scripts, and you should learn how to be a director, at least take a class in each, because
Mhm.
it really does, each one really connects you to a version of yourself, a part of yourself that you won't know otherwise. And it all helps
Yeah.
with your acting. Knowing how everything works together helps you create a better character in the long run.
And I would
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say too helps you as a person. Just
Mm.
having different outlets, I think I was actually having this conversation with an actor friend of mine because it's LA and everyone is an actor. So you have actor friends. But I was having this conversation about the relationship between like emotion in acting, because I think people see it as like pretending to be someone else. In reality, acting is really just getting in touch with yourself and your
Yeah.
emotional space and bringing that
Yeah.
forward into whatever character that you're portraying.
No,
So really you have to
100%.
know yourself really well in order to get that across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite teacher that I ever had for acting ever was the first person to really connect that for me. And they were very much like, you will only truly give a good performance and really like connect with your audience when you connect with the character. There has to be a part of every character that you connect with. You need to find something in common with them, and you need to find a common goal and a commonality, a thread that you can lock into, and then connect experiences in your life with what that person's experiences would have been. You know what I mean? And that's the real way to dig into a role and make it feel authentic.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry, you said that in a way where like I wish it was written down for
Mm.
curriculum for all actors. Yeah, like at the start of every semester.
Well, that's very sweet. Well, I mean, I just think there's such a big overlap between creativity and mental health.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I think getting in touch with your emotional space only does good for
Mm-hmm.
you,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
also art doesn't replace mental health services. I
No.
think that's also a key thing.
Correct. I agree. But I
Yeah.
do think that there's such a strong relationship between mental
Yeah.
health and creativity. And
Yeah.
I think more
Yeah.
people should explore that because I think it can be a really beautiful result.
Yeah. This is why
Yeah.
arts in school are so important.
Yes, that's true
Keep
Yeah.
arts in
also.
school, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caitlin, you also unlocked another thing that reminded me of part of my process, or like, yeah, I don't know if it's like an official process, but when you said the things about like taking all the classes, being
Mm.
all the different hats, that kind of unlocked what I really try to do in my life is like leaning into curiosity
Mm.
and leaning into the unknown of like you might not know anything about this or someone else might not know anything else about what you do, but if you like share that information, share your resources, like it just like opens up so many different worlds and
Mm-hmm.
opportunities and like potential collaborations and new friends and um yeah, and that's where the beautiful parts of art is really made that like most people don't actually get to see.
Yeah.
But that's like my favorite part of the process of art.
See, that's
Yeah.
mental health right there, leaning into curiosity. It's full circle, y'all.
Oh, it really is.
I was going to ask Maze, what are you working on right now?
um,
If you
a
would like to
lot.
share any
Yeah,
that are
absolutely.
coming up.
So I just wrapped a dance film, which will be out. I wrapped a short film, which I don't know when will be out. I'm about to be in 3 plays, all in April.
Oh my
I'm I
gosh!
yeah, I start rehearsal this week. I'm in a
Send us
drag
the
show.
info.
Yes, please
I
do.
will. I'm in an all drag king show, which is March 22nd. My own like
Amazing.
drag king persona has his own social media outside of my
What's
personal
your
social
drag
media and acting.
king
My
persona?
drag king is Labyrinth, aka Play on Maze.
I love that. Yeah,
But
that
I
makes
like that.
thank
sense.
you. Yes, but the social media is Pretty Boy Labyrinth
Pretty
outside of
Boy
Hi There, I'm
Labyrinth.
Maze. Yeah,
That.
one of the plays I'm in, I just got to be on like a little kids TV show about puppets and identity and accepting yourself and my puppet persona, Tish the ostrich. She's kind of going places. She's about to be in another play. She'll be in one of the plays. She has
Tish
her
the
own like little
ostrich is an amazing image in
she
my
like
head.
yeah, like I transform into an ostrich with my entire body, so I've like done a bit of like like contortionism and puppetry and I handmade this
Wow.
costume.
That's
She is an
amazing.
allegory. Yeah, she's an allegory to transness. I've
Mm.
like started to really like care about her, but I was like improving, and her background story is that she is an emu, assigned emu at birth, but identifies as an ostrich. Her father is Oscar the ostrich, but her mother is Patricia the ostrich, and that's why she's Tish. And so
That's
there's so much
so
more that
cute.
it's so much more, and like there's so much more that's gonna come from both Labyrinth and Tish. And those are specific things that are like they require a lot of like work and emotional labor, but it doesn't feel like work.
Mm.
And speaking of like leaning into curiosity, I'm like, well, I'm leaning into Pretty Boy Labyrinth is this like unabashed, unhinged pretty boy twink who's been religiously suppressed all his life, and now he's just like sexually and sensually unhinged. And then
I love it.
there's this ostrich. So I'm like, I'm this twink, this like pretty boy twink in one spectrum of the gender, and the other spectrum I'm an ostrich.
There's some really great diversity in your roles.
I love it.
There really is.
They're great.
And then I'm about to be in a dance show, a part of a dance company that I've been a part of for the past couple years. We're doing our show again in May and potentially June again. And then there's another show that I have yet to share for June. That's dance related.
So exciting.
yeah.
So many things on the horizon.
Yeah,
Thank
you definitely need
you.
to let us know how we can come and support you, because we definitely want to.
Thank
Last question that we have for you, because I know we're at an hour here. So if your art can do one thing for a queer youth, a trans youth, someone of color who comes across your art, what do you want it to do for them?
I want them to know that of all that, like all your intersectional identities can exist in one space. You don't have to let go of one identity or another whenever you enter a room. There is space for every part of you to actually be welcomed and included. Yeah, those spaces exist and do want you.
I love that.
Maze, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been our pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me and asking me.
Keep showing up even when it's messy. We'll see you next time in the closet.